Is everybody well caffeinated post the coffee break? Yes. Good. As shared, I'm Carey Arun. I'm the Principal Commercial Officer at the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai, and I have the utmost honor of working with my colleagues here at the U.S. Embassy in Sri Lanka to support trade between Sri Lanka and the United States. So Daniel Jackson is here in the front. He is my counterpart. He assists me here in market as we are working with Sri Lankan companies, either to help you work with American companies here or to facilitate investment back to the United States. So I'm with the U.S. Department of Commerce. I'm the equivalent of the trade agency, and we have three main responsibilities as we work abroad. We facilitate American business to export their products and services around the world. We protect general American business interests abroad. So thank you to the AmCham for putting on today's program. These are really important discussions as we work to facilitate American business here in Sri Lanka. And then the third, which I'm going to talk more about today with this presentation, is facilitating foreign direct investment back to the United States. So Sri Lankan businesses looking to set up some sort of presence in the US, either sales offices, warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, it really runs the gamut. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our program that's called Select USA. We actually assist as the central government in the United States at like a business consultant to help you access the US market, to set up those investments in the US market. So as was shared, I'm stationed at the Consulate General in Chennai, and I cover Sri Lanka and Maldives as part of my responsibilities there in South India. We also have, as part of the team in India, a patent and trademark office and a Bureau of Industry and Security. This part of the world, this is the largest presence of the U.S. Department of Commerce anywhere in the world. In particular, India, we have 7 offices there. That is the largest presence that we have anywhere in the world. But then when you look at the region, including Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, Bhutan, this is our largest single mission presence anywhere. So that goes to show you how important that we feel is with trade between Sri Lanka and the region and the United States. So the other thing that's kind of unique about the organization that I work for is that not only do we have overseas offices in 80 markets around the world, we also have offices across the United States. So as I was mentioning, we facilitate American business doing business overseas. So usually that means helping find agent, distributor, partner, rep in market. Many of you that are members of the AmCham have long-standing relationships with American industry where you are their representative here in country. And so that is the core of what we do as the Department of Commerce, facilitating those types of relationships. But here in Sri Lanka, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Sri Lankan businesses that are already working in the US market, either representing American business here, or your companies are exporting to the US already, thinking about some sort of presence in the United States. Now, I think some of you already have sales offices or warehousing and distribution, but I know many of you do not. And so I want to talk a little bit about our assistance as the government to facilitate those types of investments into the U.S. So this program is called Select USA, and we work very much like a business consultant through every life cycle stage of investments to the U.S. to facilitate and grow those investments there. I'm a firm believer that investments in the U.S. from a foreign country both benefits that foreign country and the United States. And so me personally, when I'm working with a business, I like to understand what your plan is for both your domestic market, so here in Sri Lanka, your plans for the region, but then also your plans for exporting and where you might go next. And so when we work with you, we like to understand not just the 6-month plan or the 1-year plan, but what is your company's growth strategy and your story, and we want to help you achieve those goals. So Select USA has been created to facilitate job-creating business and investment in the United States while remaining geographically neutral to assist companies looking to invest and or expand their operations in the U.S. So because I represent our central government, I can never tell you which of our 50 states plus 4 territories where to go. But what I can do is give you information and data and counseling to help you and your businesses make a smart decision on what places in the U.S. might be the best fit. In addition to our assistance and counseling, we host the largest sovereign government investors conference anywhere in the world. It's called the Select USA Summit. We have 8 companies as of this morning signed up and registered to join us at the summit. A couple of you are in the room. Could you guys raise your hand or stand up for me? So I've got, oh, they're all back there at the back. They're our backbenchers. We have 8 companies. In the time that I have covered Sri Lanka, this is the largest delegation that we've ever had go. We are hoping to get a couple of more to make it Sri Lanka's largest delegation ever to the Investors Summit. The Investors Summit is a really great program because it's a one-stop shop for those of you looking to expand your businesses in the U.S. or to think about investing in the U.S. I'll talk a little bit more about the program later on, but do note it's May 3 through 6, just outside of D.C., and we hope that if you're doing business in the U.S., you're able to join us. So, how do we work with companies like yours? As I mentioned, we provide information and data. We also make connections to our individual states and territories. So when we're working with a potential or an existing investor, all of the incentives, assistance at the state level is managed by economic development teams that work for the state governments. And so how do you connect to those people? How do you understand what their offerings are? We can do that. Daniel and myself and our team here in Sri Lanka, as well as my team in Chennai, can work with you to gain access to these officials in the individual state government offices. And you can do this on your own. You don't need us as the U.S. government to do this for you. My card is really tiny, but for those of you that have seen my card, the value of going through us is this golden eagle, right? It's me coming as the government official saying to my partner in the state government, that this is a qualified, vetted investor coming from the Sri Lankan market who is seriously interested in considering your state or territory. And so what do we think that does? It moves you to the front of the line. It gets you the assistance quicker, faster, more in depth than if you were to just be a number in a queue that filled out a form online saying you were interested in coming to their state. The other thing we do is facilitation and navigation on the federal regulatory system in the United States. So many industries don't have any regulatory requirements at all in the U.S. The U.S. is the #1 place in the world for ease of doing business. So in a lot of instances, you don't need any help to do anything in the United States that you're looking to do. But in those rare instances where you do need assistance, having a connection with us understanding what your investments and your plans are in the U.S. market, we're able to step in and facilitate if you do run into an issue or you need assistance. So, as I mentioned, we have lots of data and lots of information. The first thing that I want to point out is this investor's guide. So if you're investing or you're looking to just do business in the United States, this is a really fantastic tool. It's a 14-chapter guide. It's all available publicly on our website, and it has a number of different areas that would be interesting for you as you're looking to do business abroad, in the United States, or make an investment. I'll just run through these 14 chapters quickly. The first one is an overall investment checklist. At the back of this chapter, there's a one-page guide that actually talks you through setting up a business in the United States. It is literally that simple. With about $20 and 20 minutes, you could register a business from here in the US. You don't need a consultant, you don't need a partner, you don't even really have to have decided where you're gonna go. But you could register the business and then do the process to get a tax ID. It's that simple. We also have information on immigration, business structure. We have different types of business structuring, just like you do here in Sri Lanka. We have information on taxes. In the United States, you may have responsibility for 3 levels of income tax: at the national level, at the state level, and at the county or city level. And so what does that information look like? What do you have liabilities on? What do you need to know? So there's information in this guide. Workforce activity and availability. I think many of you are aware that sometimes you hear in the news that it's hard to find labor in the United States, or that labor is very expensive. This chapter talks about the availability of the workforce in the US, as well as programming and assistance to help you develop the workforce, especially if you're looking at doing something that's high-end manufacturing. The next 2 chapters are FDI restrictions, as well as the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. If you are working in an extremely high-tech sector, or in the defense space, there may be limitations as a foreign investor on what you can invest in or what type of work that you can do. So these 2 chapters cover that extensively. I would encourage you, if you're in the defense space, to look at that and then have a conversation with Daniel or I to see if what you're looking to do in the way of an investment makes sense and would be plausible in the United States. We also have information on intellectual property. As I mentioned, in New Delhi, we have a regional patent and trademark attaché from the US Department of Commerce. If you have questions about IP or IP restrictions or even registering your IP in the US, let us know. We're happy to have conversations with you about that process. I was sharing with a group of exporters this morning that many foreign companies set up some sort of subsidiary in the US initially as a safeguard to their IP, especially when they have high valuable IP or trade secrets that they're looking to protect. We also have information on banking. How do you access the banking market? How do you get a bank account? How do you get financing? Site selection. How do you determine where you go in a particular jurisdiction? Incentives from the economic development teams across the United States. It's a lot of information to weed through. We have not only basic information on our website about what incentives exist, but we have it at every state. Every US state and territory fills out a database where they talk about their high-level incentives. Incentives can range from a discounted office space to land to a consultant to help you find commercial property. It could be tax abatement on your state or city taxes. It could be a tax incentive on capital costs for standing up a facility. It could be workforce development or a training grant. It could be low-cost loans through the state government. It really runs the gamut, and so without diving deep into your individual company plans and what you're looking to do both here in Sri Lanka and abroad, it's hard for us to tell you what incentives are available, but just about anything exists in one of our 50 states. We also have information on how do you do federal procurement, right? Whoever has bid on a government tender here in Sri Lanka, I'm sure there's a lot of you, right? And how complicated is it? It's not any less complicated in the US, but the rules are different. And so we have information here about how do you register to become a vendor with the US government? How do you get the ID and the information and qualified ability to bid on procurements? And so there's two chapters here, actually. Chapter 12 is separated into two parts that talks about this whole process. With my personal background working for the government as well as in industry, I have extensive background in doing government contracting, and so if we have a conversation about a potential investment for you in the US, I'm also happy to talk to you about the landscape as it relates to government procurement. And then there's also information on US capital market structure. So are you a company that might go IPO? How do you think about that? Are you looking for VC funding or other investors? So a lot of information here. And then the last one, it's the current chapter 14, is how do you partner with our US research organizations? So activities organizations like DARPA or our national energy labs or our pharma research. How do you get access to these organizations that are doing cutting-edge research in the US that'll benefit both the US market and the Sri Lankan market? So this is a really good primer if you have just basic questions. It's a really good primer if you've been in the US, but maybe you didn't look into one of these issues in depth. It doesn't replace the need for having assistance in particular areas, like you're gonna have to have a good CPA or a tax attorney. If you're looking at immigration, you might need someone to facilitate immigration. But what this does is it gives you really good information at the first level, so that way when you are working with those folks, you have a basic level of knowledge of the US market as well as our rules. So that way you can have a smart conversation and maybe be at step 2 or 3 instead of 0 without any information at all. So we will share these slides with AmCham. You guys will all have access to them. We'll share the information. So the link is here, but we'll get it to you as well. We also have information, data. We have access to almost all of the US government's data that would help you make a smart decision on an investment to the United States. So if you're looking for cost of living or workforce availability or connectivity to ports or what the rail network looks like, shipping and logistics writ large, or where our industry clusters are, we have all of that. It's publicly available on our website. What's really interesting is that we have a library of fact sheets that are organized by state, by general flows of foreign direct investment, flow by international market, and then FDI by industry. So say that you are in the automotive sector and you want to see where our automotive clusters are in the US, but you also want to see where other companies like yours from other markets are investing. We have all of this publicly available on the website. And then we have the individual data. There are about 6 different sources where we collate all of this data that makes it publicly accessible to you. If you do hire a consultant because you need more help than what we can provide, I guarantee your consultant is using the same database to get access to the information to help you make a decision on site selection. And so as I mentioned, cost of real estate and cost of property, cost of living, cost of doing business in all of our 54 territories, actual demographics, what type of people are living in these jurisdictions, the cost of energy, industry clusters, infrastructure, logistics, water, wastewater, work and wages. Literally any data point that you need, we probably have access to it. And if we don't have it publicly on our website, I guarantee I can get the information from our data research team in Washington. And so we work with a lot of businesses that are self-sufficient and able to digest this information directly from the website, but we also have direct counseling services where we'll sit down with you, have you identify what information you need, and then we have our team of data scientists in Washington come back with a report for you where you can rank order the potential locations in the United States based off those data factors that are important to you. So, our annual Investor Summit. We do this counseling all through the year. We work with companies all of the time in helping them identify how to get to the US, how to set up in the US, where to go. Again, I'm geographically neutral, so I can't tell you the place that you pick is the right place, but we can help you see that it's the right place based off the data and the information that we can provide. You can do this without ever going to our Investor Summit. But the Investor Summit that happens every year in May is a one-stop shop where you can do a lot of this and meet with all of the right folks over a 3-day period. The summit attracts folks from over 100 countries around the world that are looking to make or already have investments in the United States. It's chaired by the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, and we get cabinet-level participation from every cabinet agency across the U.S. government. It is the highest profile event in the United States and the only one run by the U.S. government to facilitate foreign direct investment to the U.S. It's organized into kind of 3 parts. We have the conference programming. That conference programming will talk about trends that are going on in the US, which industries we're looking at. This year, we're gonna have industry spotlights on biotech and healthcare, critical supply chain sectors, energy, food and beverage, and semiconductors. We're also going to have sessions on transactionally, how do you set up in the US? How do you invest in the US? So these classes that will teach you how to figure out the banking requirements, on how do you choose the right location. So those will all be going on over the 3 days. And then we also have every US territory set up in an exhibit hall. So all 50 states plus our 4 territories come either with their secretaries of commerce or their governors because they're interested in meeting with you, with companies like yours that are thinking about their state. Now, they're all competing with each other, right? And so if you go to the Investor Summit, my philosophy is that we should have already had a conversation or 2 with the state governments before you get there, so that we do that front-end planning to figure out what information you need, so that way when you're there, you're having the 2nd or the 3rd conversation with the governor or with the Secretary of Commerce, and hopefully making a decision on where you might land up if you're gonna make an investment in the next 6 months to a year. It's a lot of information, it's very high level, but we find that companies that participate in the Investor Summit usually accelerate their investment and are able to start doing business quicker, faster, more accurately than they were if they didn't attend. We also have a vertical for companies that may be not so far along in their business journey. So we work with a lot of tech startups to help them access the US market. At Select USA, we have a vertical, it's called Select USA Tech, where it is targeted specifically at startups. And so the criteria to qualify as a startup is that they must have a product or service that is either already commercialized or near to commercialization. They're considering market expansion to the US in the next 2 to 3 years, as well as they must not be more than 10 years old, have less than 40 employees, and less than 10 million in annual revenue. Generally, a company that fits this profile has a Series A or B funding, or some sort of similar seed funding, where they're not looking for customers because they haven't made a sale yet, but they have some sort of consumer base. They know that the US is the right market for their product, or that is one of the right markets in the West for their product. The really interesting thing at the summit is that we actually do a pitching competition. And so this year we have 4 verticals: ag tech, ICT, clean tech, and healthcare, and then we have a general open one. And so if you have a company that would qualify as a startup, or maybe you're mentoring a company here in Sri Lanka that is a startup that knows the consumer market they're trying to attract is in the United States, talk to them about this program. It might be a good fit for them. 2 years ago at the pitching competition, we had a Sri Lankan company win. Out of 90 markets around the world, they won the pitching competition. So what does this do? It gets them access to VCs, it gets them access to mentors, it gets them direct access to these state governments to help them accelerate their growth journey in the United States. We also have programming specific to the startups. How do you expand in the US? How do you do fundraising? So what's the difference between angel, venture, and startup capital? How do you go from startup capital to IPO? How do you do the pitching at the conference? And then how do you grow in the US market? So beyond the conference programming and all of the activity, it's a really good networking event. You are meeting industrialists from around the world that are also looking at expansion in the United States or already have significant expansion in the US. So last year we had more than 5,500 people participate from over 100 countries around the world, and we had representation from every US state and territory, as well as 1,100 representatives from our state government partners. So you can see kind of where the investment is coming and the folks that are interested in participating. When we talk about industry and industry sector, we are industry agnostic. Any company in any industry can join the Investors Summit. Last year, the top sector representation was in energy, business and professional services, information technology and communication, automotive, healthcare, food and beverage, design and construction, equipment and machinery, agribusiness, and financial services. So looking at the profile of companies that belong to the AmCham here, this is every one of you. If you're not already in the US, you're not already selling to the US, then let's have a conversation about that. If you've been active in the US, if the US is one of your top markets where you're exporting from Sri Lanka too, and you don't physically have a presence in the US, let's have a conversation about that. Can we help you grow your business and your market share in the United States? And what does that look like? Maybe it's a sales office, maybe it's a servicing office, and maybe that sales office is just 1 or 2 people, right? But we want to make sure that if you're picking a place to put sales office, servicing, warehouse, distribution, logistics, that that facility or that location will be a good fit for you, not just today, but in the long-term growth of your business in the US market. I have other companies that we're actively talking with from Sri Lanka about setting up some sort of parallel manufacturing. So not taking manufacturing away here from Sri Lanka, but they've reached capacity at what they can do here in the market. So we're looking at whether or not the US would make sense for them for a manufacturing location, or maybe it's final assembly. And so this is not a zero-sum game. We work with investors at every life cycle of their business journey, and investments to the US that are at every life cycle of that journey. So if you have questions or concerns, I'm going to be around today for a couple of hours. I know a few of you I have individual meetings with scheduled to talk about your potential plans for the US market. I'm here visiting from Chennai. I'm always available, but Daniel is here. He is our econ and commercial officer here at the embassy. He and his team are happy to meet with you all individually as well and talk about your plans for the US market to see how we can help you access it. Thank you so much.